Hey everyone and welcome back. So today I'm reviewing March of the Machine regarding the Pauper format, and I believe we do have something really cool printed in this new expansion. Even though they just reprinted Reckless Impulse with an alternative name. So now we will be able to play 8 copies of Reckless Impulse because Brands Resolve as the same effect, the same card type, sorcery, and also the same mana cost. So the only change is the name. Rance Result over Reckless Impulse. So that means that you can now play mono red with 8 copies of Reckless Impulse, maybe even 4 copies of Experimental Synthesizer, or you can eventually play something different like a mid-range pile with red as main color, splashing, like to say, green or blue or whatever color you prefer, even white, black, colorless. I mean, usually mid-range piles in Pauper tends to have a high converted mana cost because they want to play better end game cards like the Initiative or Burning Party or Grey Merchant of Asphodel, just to say. And when it comes to cards like Reckless Impulse, you prefer or you tend to have a even lower converted mana cost. Just to say, mono red tends to have only 17 lands and 1 or 2 mana spells. Reckless Impulse is probably the higher costly card in the deck. So having a mid-range pair that try to have a lower converted mana cost seems really difficult, but we already have mid-range pile that tend to have 2 as the higher mana cost, and that is Affinity. The biggest difference between Affinity and the other mid-range piles are the Affinity cards. So Mirror Enforcer, Gear Seeker Serpent, and even Tokast, they have a high converted mana cost, but you don't need the mana to play them. So it's kind of weird because beside Cake Artificer, you just need to pay 1 or 2 mana to play all your other spells. So that deck tends also to land every land drops, and their card advantage is better compared to Reckless Impulse and Experimental Synthesizer because they draw you the cards instead of exiling them. So it's way better. But still, if you don't wanna play black or blue, you can still have a card advantage source in form of a Reckless Impulse in red. So that means you can also try to play something like a combo shell with Reckless Impulse and Red Result as a card advantage instead of cards like Night Whisper and Deadly Dispute. That may be better, I don't know, because Storm is highly unplayable since we don't have DP ops. So usually what Storm requires or any other kind of combo is the payoff and not the enabler, and usually card advantage is just the enabler. Anyway, there are other 2 cards that are just functional reprints of cards already available in the format, like for example Corrupted Conviction, which is Village Rights, same card, change only the name. So for that reason, probably the card isn't really playable, since Village Rise is already worse compared to Deadly Dispute. Deadly Dispute is way better thanks to the treasure token that allow you to then play another dispute sacrificing the token, and overall you prefer to be able to sacrifice an artifact over a creature. That's way better. And then we have Frost Reinforcement, which is another 2 mana token generator. So 2 mana for 2/1/1 token is very similar, as we already have seen that thing for so many cards that I don't even know how many of them we have. Alright, so I think we can go looking at what other cards we have in the expansion. And we have Cyber Cryptomancer as my most favorited card for this set expansion. So Cyber Cryptomancer is a 2 mana Slipper Bogle with Flash and Backup 1. Backup is a new ability that allow you to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature, and you can also target the same creature, but when you don't target your Cyber Cryptomancer and instead you target another creature, you can give to the creature until end of turn the following ability. So in this case, X-Proof. Probably the ability is way better on rare cards, because usually they have longer texts, more abilities, and more powerful abilities. But in this case, Cyber Cryptomancer is cool, is good. I mean, a lower converted mana cost for a X-Proof creature with Flash is just good. Also, you can just play it as a way to protect your creatures, because it's a 2 mana counter target removal spell. It can even target Chinar's. It can even counter Chinar's Edict. So that's an even better thing, because you have a counter which is also a creature, and you can play it, in example, in Immutable Fairies, and bring it back with Ninja. And it's a flash creature, and also it's a ninja itself, but without ninjutsu, which is very weird. I think that I don't really want to play Cyber Cryptomancer in a Immutable Fairies deck, but instead I'd like it to play in Mono White Heroic. As I said, is another copy of Slipper Bogle, because Slipper Bogle is both green and blue, so you can play it in a blue-based deck. And I already tried Azur's Heroic. So in Azur's Heroic, now you have 8 copies of Slipper Bogle, and you can play 8 X-Proof creatures and 8 heroic creatures. So going up to 8 1-mana creatures and 8 2-mana creatures, and half of your creatures have X-Proof, which is really relevant for auras-based aggro decks. The most annoying part of the deck is that now you will not be able to have all untapped lands, and you are forced to play dual lands or cards like Ash Barrens and a basic island. And that's really annoying. Would be obviously better to have untapped dual lands, but since the format is Pauper, it's kind of difficult. But the cool part, I think, that is that Heroic tends to be more consistent compared to Buggles. Buggles deck, I mean the Celestia aggro auras based deck, is tends to be favorited in the current metagame thanks to cards like Armadillo Clock, but usually is very weak by itself because it isn't consistent at all, and you usually die by not being able to draw anything relevant. So for that reason, I think that you may want to try a Serious Rake, or at least I will be trying it after the expansion will be legal on Magic Online, and I'm pretty sure that will somewhat be playable. Probably not the best thing, but still an aura stack with enough good cards, because you can still play cards that are, I mean, counter for removal spells, and Cyber Cryptomancer by itself is a counter to a removal spell, so an aura deck, an aggro deck can be both payoff and counter, so that's crazy amazing, and that's the reason why people like it in Mono White Roik, in Mono Blue Fairies, but as I already said, I prefer to try a different route compared to Mono Blue Fairies. Then we have Seed of Hope. I don't think that Seed of Hope is playable in the format, but still people seem to like it in decks like Tortured Existence or Auras, because already they play something like 1 mana, 1 green mana, look at the top 3, 4, 5 cards, pick a permanent, reveal it, and add it to your hand. Here, the cool part is instant, is that the card is an instant, but also you get 2 lives, and you have to choose between 2 permanents. Not really great. Having to choose only between 2 permanents make it the card really weak, and usually I think that the Tortured Existence doesn't really need cards like Seed of Hope, but instead they need something that make the deck less reliant on Tortured Existence and more stable, and potentially have a way to counter cards like Doombringer Cleric or similar that are really powerful to stop the main card advantage, or the main engine of the deck, which is Tortured Existence. So from my opinion, this card isn't playable in the format right now. Now we have Weary Thespian. Why am I reviewing Weary Thespian, a card that is clearly not good in the format? Well, because we have Guildsworn Prowler, or whatever it is called, the card, the 2 mana creature that isn't played in oh wait, this is the alchemy version of the card. Where's the other one? Alright, so this card, which is probably amazing in draft, is probably, or at least in my opinion, not really good in constructed. Well, you know, drawing a card only when the creature dies usually makes the card really bad in constructed, and giving it that touch doesn't really add anything. The cool part about the card is that it's a 2 mana creature in a deck with a very huge mana curve. I mean, mono black with initiative, the mono black deck splashing green for Killing Garden and Avenging Hunter, and that also play that dispute. And playing that dispute is probably the main reason to playing Guildsworn Prowler, is that you usually don't have a lot of creature that feed the ultimate of the initiative, but also you are very weak in the early game, so you aren't able to deploy enough creatures in the early game to try to race or interact with your opponent board state. So for that reason, probably is the Guildsworn Prowler is fine, but having only 1 creature at a low mana cost doesn't really add enough to the deck, in my opinion. So for that reason, I think that Weary Thespian, which is very similar under certain aspects, can be, I think, the other playset of Guildborn's Prowler in the deck. So now you will be able eventually to play 8 copy of a 2 mana creature that can interact and kind of generate card advantage. Compared to Guildborn Prowler, it do something, but when it enters on the battlefield and when it dies, which is surveil 1. So you surveil twice, so potentially digging more, which is better against regressive decks, and also you are able to potentially kill another creature since it has 3 on power, and you aren't really you don't really have any mana issue, probably because you're already playing Candy Gather and others green mana source, and also it does something even if it was blocking, since Guildsworn Prowl doesn't do nothing if it dies after a block, so under certain ways it's kind of better. Anyway, you aren't really interested in having that many card draw in a deck that is already playing 8 copies of Deadly Dispute and even Blood Fountain. So, in my opinion, the card is fine. It's of course not the best 2 mana drop you may be playing, whatever deck you are playing, but 3-1 like a 2-1 or a 2-2 still dies through like Galvanic Blast or a Lightning Bolt, and Surveil 1 is still similarly to Scry, something good enough. In my opinion, the card is bad, but Guildsworn Prowler still in my opinion is bad, so I will try eventually both of those cards in a mono black dispute, but in my opinion those cards and the deck as well aren't really great. So then we have Urn of the Godfire. Urn of the Godfire is Energy Refractor number 2. Hey. So the card isn't good, but Flickercon requires a lot of colored mana sources, and usually tend to have 4 Prism or Energy Refractor and then a couple of artifacts. In this case, the second artifact is Network Terminal that can give you some loot effect in the late game, but in case of Urn of the Godfire, you aren't trading a sort of card advantage or card selection, but instead you have a removal spell, and a very pricey removal spell. In my opinion, the card isn't much good, especially compared to the already available mana rocks, but since it has the same text as Energy Refractor, and can be a removal spell in the late game when you already draw another Energy Refractor, the card can be somewhat good. I'll probably try it and then I'll probably drop it from the deck because, having the ability to destroy one creature in a late game or an enchantment isn't much, but since, having an extra interaction is probably good, but you also need to draw another Energy Refractor. The card is weird. And you need to test it first. Network Terminal isn't good in the deck, but you play it just because you want another colored mana source, and you basically play Network Terminal because there's anything better compared to it. So when it comes to Urn of Godfire, the card is kind of, there's nothing better than Energy Refractor number 2 in my deck, and sometimes I'm able to destroy a Makeshift Munitions or a Journey to Nowhere or the Modern Age. Okay, maybe since you can play Trinket Mage and Fetching Expedition Map and Urn of the Goldfire, maybe the card could be kind of playable sometimes. I'm not sure yet. And well, overgrown test. Okay, so the card isn't... okay, the card by itself is good, especially in Limited, and especially in March of the Machine Limited, because when it comes on the battlefield, you look at the top 5 cards of the library and you have a land or double visit card from them to your hand. It costs only 3 mana and it's a 2/2. So Drax Rager in green that fetch you a card can be really good in the game. But in Pauper, it mostly will fetch only one land, because probably we don't really have a lot of double-faced cards. Probably the best pick is the Modern Age, but besides the Modern Age, I guess there's nothing much else. Okay, there's Lunar Veteran, Loyal Qatar, Keybacker Corners Raid, and even Delver of Secrets. But you know, when it comes to cards at any age, probably you just want to pick the Modern Age. But play what are you gonna play if you play about Overgrown Pest and Modern Age? Some sort of Azorius Gate Splashing Green for Overgrown Pest and Cerebral Gatekeeper. Well, that's an idea, but same not against decks, against player. I just leave this kind of interaction to whoever likes to play these decks. Okay, so last two cards in this video are Sunder the Gateway, and Meeting of Minds. Sunder the Gateway is a Dawnbringer cleric that can also kill artifacts, but doesn't have the life gain option or the exile one card from the graveyard option. So you can either play a 2/2 by 2 mana or a 2/2 by 4 mana, and that's good enough. I mean, you will now be able to play 4 copies of Grizzly Bear in your White Winnie deck, and that Grizzly Bear will be able to destroy Mirror Forcer when it enters on the battlefield. Yeah, it will require 2 extra mana, but that's fine enough to me. You can eventually destroy one artifact land by turn 2, and the opponent can't counter Sunder the Gateway with any Pyroblast or Hydroblast, so that's pretty cool. I mean, I'll probably try White Winnie with 4 copies of Sunder the Gateway in the main deck, since White Winnie seems to be well positioned in the current game. Basically, White Winnie is an anti-meta deck that aims to kill both Affinity and Mono-Red Quillbot. It can also good against Gates and even against Demon Terror. It's really bad against Altartron, Flickertron, Thanaliers, and whatever other decks, but generally speaking, White Winnie is probably not really played just because people don't like the deck or don't think that the deck is good. But whenever you want to just kill the top tier decks in the format or the most played decks in the format, White Winnie is still one of the best choice in the current metagame, at least. And finally, Meeting of Minds. So Meeting of Minds is just another 4 mana draw 2 cards spell, but thanks to Convoke, it may be maybe the only or the best Convoke spell in Pauper. So a lot of people, so in starting, when I see the first time Meeting of Minds, I initially thought of Monoblue Furies, because Monoblue Furies is already playing mine. The card is pretty similar size. If you have 2 or 3 creatures, you can tap them to draw 2 cards. It's also an instant speed, so it may be good, but you know, half one mind it costs only 1 mana. And Meeting of Minds, I haven't thought you can tap your creatures. It still costs 4 mana, so basically you are tapping your 1 creature instead of tapping 1 island. So Monoblue Fairies probably prefer to just attack with their creatures, so 1 mana will still be better, probably. But beside Monoblue Fairies, Beside Monoblue Fairies, you still can play it in other blue-based decks, like an example, Familiars, and some sort of token-based strategies, with shared discovery. So in familiars, if you have a Sandscape familiar on the battlefield, Sandscape familiar discount every blue spell you just tap 2 mana to draw 2 cards, and that's fine enough. Also, you are a control deck with a lot of creatures, so is very likely that you may have enough creatures, even if you don't have Sandscape familiar, to just draw 2 cards. And if you consider that in the current metagame has a lot of progressive decks, probably could be better to play Meeting of Minds over Deep Analysis. Even though I'm a huge fan of deep analysis in familiars, there's no more room to play the full set of deep analysis because the metagame is too fast, too aggressive, and probably Meeting of Minds could be even better because you can tap your creatures and it's an instant speed spell, so you can just leave your mana open, let your creature block the opponent creatures, and then play the spell in their end phase and draw 2 cards by tapping a bunch of creatures, so that's pretty amazing. And as I already said, shared discovery because it's very similar, and if you have 2 creatures or 4 tapped creatures, you can tap them and draw a bunch of cards. So similarly to the other cards we already seen, that's kind of a functional reprint. It works in a very different way compared to shared discovery, of course, but since it has to convoke, if for example you have a Rouse Reinforcement, you can tap the blue tokens to draw the cards and pay, to pay the blue mana cost, so it's very cool in my opinion. Not sure if a blue green or a red blue or even a red blue green decks may be born from Meeting of Minds and Shared Discovery, but you know, something like Temur combo tokens was a thing many years ago because the deck wasn't good. It was a sort of tier 2 or tier 3 decks, and especially in the current format with a lot of mass removal spells like Smash the Dust, Free Cannonade, Bird Weapon, etc., and also Gargan Shaman. Playing tokens isn't really an advantage anymore. But in blue you can also play many counter spells to counter the most troublesome stuff. We don't have any counter that with Convoke, but would be eventually very cool to have. And you know, maybe the card isn't bad. So for that reason, I think that a try is worth. Alright, so guys, thank you for watching this video. I think I'll see you next week with a new video where I think I'll talk about the format since these new prints and the recent Pauper results may be an interesting starting point to make a discussion on how the format is evolving and what we may be expecting the format to become in the next months or next year. So bye and have a nice Sunday.